Of all the weapons that have been brought to us this expansion, it is this one right here, guys, that I have been the most curious about. Our very first Rocket Assisted Pulse Rifle. Now, you heard that right. It's a Rocket Assisted Pulse Rifle. Essentially, Bungie has given us the same Rocket Assist frame that was originally only present on sidearms, but now they've given it to pulse rifles. And let me just say, guys, this thing has been an absolute monster. Now, first and foremost, this pulse rifle is called Mint Retrograde. And to get it, it's actually quite simple. You simply just need to play Pinnacle Ops. Now, Bungie did turn off Pinnacle Ops for about an hour, then they turned it back on. Hopefully, Pinnacle Ops doesn't get turned off again. But if you navigate over to your portal, hit the Pinnacle tab, you'll have a list of missions that you could run. And yes, every one of these missions have the chance to drop this pulse rifle. Now, normally when we talk weapon reviews, we immediately dive into the perks. But with this being a brand new weapon archetype, we're going to be taking a look at its damage first. With Edge of Fate, we also finally got the shooting range, which is one of the best things they've added this expansion. Now, I do want to mention that we're going to only be testing against these target bots. The shooting range is fantastic, but there's some problems. For example, here on Carl, who we love to blow our load into, when I do 99 damage with Graviton Spike, the scoreboard says 66. And actually across many weapons, this seems to be the case, and it seems to be the case with all types of enemies in this arena. Now, maybe I'm looking at it wrong, but that's what it's spitting out, guys. The one saving grace, though, is that these target bots, those do in fact display the correct damage values. So if you see us doing a lot of testing on these guys, that's why. And I know these guys are coded as majors, don't worry. We'll be working through some conversions on that, but I just wanted to get that out of the way before we dive into damage numbers. Now, in terms of other light housekeeping, we did do all of these tests at 150 weapon stats, which I know is a bit high, but I just wanted to throw it on just to see, but we've kept things equal across the board. Looking at the damage though for each shot, this thing deals 393 damage plus 270 explosive damage for a total of 663 damage per shot. Now, with it being a 3-round burst, that brings our total damage up per burst to 1,989. Now, this weapon only holds 5 in the magazine, but similar to burst linears, these will fire 3 shots per pull, so it's 5 3-round bursts. Now, if we compare this to other special options, we can see that its damage is quite high. For instance, the Call, which is a Rocket Assisted Sidearm, deals 606 damage per shot. Scatter Signal, a rapid-fire fusion rifle, deals 1,089 damage per burst. Now, if we compare this to exotics like Choir of One, this, while aiming down sights, deals 5,024 damage per shot, with the hip fire dealing 1,330. We even looked at it compared to heavy weapons like Queen Breakers. Now, do keep in mind that these targets are technically major enemies, and heavy weapons deal more damage to boss enemies, so these numbers will be closer if we use the boss for comparison. But for Queen Breaker, this hits at 680 damage per shot, or 2,040 per burst, which, let me just say, is kind of crazy. Obviously, Queen Breaker is the better weapon for damage phases, but the fact that Mint Retrograde is doing comparable damage here against a major Queen Breakers, it's wild, man. And we also decided to run a quick DPS test here, just to see where things stand between these two. For Mint Retrograde, this has a 1 mag total of 9,878 damage, and a DPS value of 2,130. Then looking at Queen Breaker, it's 5-shot total, hit for 10,200 damage, with a DPS of 1,851. Now keep in mind, Queen Breaker with rewind rounds and its catalyst would most likely surpass this. We're just comparing the 5 shots, or in this case, the 5 bursts to each other, but it is crazy that Mint Retrograde actually beats it out in DPS. Again, of course, this is against majors here at the testing range. Now moving on to our perks. In our third column, we have Beacon Rounds, Rewind Rounds, Recycled Energy, Hatchling, Stats for All, and Envious Arsenal. Then in our fourth column, we have Bait and Switch, Chain Reaction, Slice, Elemental Honing, Master of Arms, and One for All. Let me just say right out the gate, Rewind Rounds is probably a perk that jumps out to you. This states that when this weapon's magazine is empty, it refills from reserves based on the number of hits. Now for Mint Retrograde, this means 17 total ammo and 5 in the magazine. You can literally fire all of your ammo and never need a reload, just as long as you're not missing. Another beautiful thing is that this does not require direct hits, meaning just splash damage from the rockets contribute to this as well. Now, Enhanced Rewind Round simply makes it so that the refill amount is increased slightly from 60% of the number of hits to 70%. And do remember, in regards to enhanced perks, you cannot just enhance a weapon anymore. It needs to be tier 2 or higher in order to get the enhanced versions of these perks. What I will say though is that Rewind, pretty nice, guys. In terms of a damage dealing option, you can literally just sit there and blow your load until you can't blow no more. But this takes us to our next perk, Hatchling. A little bit of strand synergy right here. This spawns a threadling by getting a precision kill or 3 rapid kills. perks. Now, even though Hatchling is no like destabilizing round or incandescent, it is still an overall good trait, especially with Strand. It helps with ad clearing. However, do keep in mind that the combination of Hatchling and Chain Reaction, this combo did just get nerfed, and now we know why. You see, in the Edge of Fate patch notes, the ability for Threadlings to trigger Chain Reaction was removed. Now, despite this interaction being gone, this combo still feels really good, especially Chain Reaction. I actually have this exact roll, and it would cause my targets to explode, dealing elemental damage, which would match the weapon's element, so in this case, Strand, and on top of that, Chain Reaction got a big buff. Because its damage along with Dragonfly and Firefly is no longer based on weapon archetype scaling, it instead uses unified damage scaling, meaning it should be the same across all weapon types, but the main takeaway for this is that it's doing a hefty amount of damage. Now, the enhanced version of Chain Reaction passively grants 20 inventory size, which is the equivalent of one old reserve mod. Now, all that really means, with enhanced Chain Reaction, we only go up to 17 total ammo, with the max going up to 18 with extended mag. I'm not really sure if Chain Reaction or enhanced Chain Reaction just isn't working properly, because even rolls with no chain or extended mag were able to get to 17. So I would assume it's not, unless Bungie intentionally puts a cap on this weapon. Now, those are the two standout perks for me in that third column. Yes, we've gotten stats for all. I don't really think you need beacon rounds. Envious Arsenal is also present here. We're dealing damage with both of the weapons before readying this weapon, refills it from reserves. It's a potential play for sure, but I just like the ability to just mindlessly lay on the trigger with rewind rounds. Now, moving on to the rest of our fourth column perks. Let's start with One for All. It grants you a 35% increase in damage for 10 seconds or 11 seconds when enhanced for simply hitting 3 separate enemies. I think what people really like about this perk is that its ease of use of proccing it, especially on a weapon like this with its spread. It's something very achievable. Now, moving on, we also have Elemental Honing. Now, this also grants us a 35% damage buff, but it requires you to deal damage with each elemental type to achieve that 35% buff. Now, the buff does last for 20 seconds or 23 seconds when it's enhanced. I will say it's fantastic if you're on Prismatic. It's also fantastic in damage rotations. But yes, it does require you to jump through a bit of hoops. Now, I will say, guys, for my folks that do want to incorporate this weapon into damage rotations, then Bait and Switch really is such a fantastic option. Deal damage with your other equipped weapons, and boom, you've got a 30% buff. Now, this lasts for 10 seconds. If you're combining this with something like rewind rounds, you could be in a situation where you can consistently blow your load without ever having to reload, and you've got the damage buff of 30%. And if you have the enhanced version of Bait and Switch, that duration goes from 10 seconds to 11 seconds. Now, of course, Bait and Switch is not the play for just like dealing with ads. I'm talking about purely from a DPS perspective. That's where Bait and Switch is really good. And then lastly, for our damage perks, you have Master of Arms, which at 2 stacks grants a max of 25% damage increase. Now, this is earned by getting kills with any weapon, so it doesn't need to be with the weapon itself. Any kills will grant Master of Arms to the weapon. Now, while it's a very easy buff to keep up, so is also One for All, and that's 35%. So for me, guys, I'm just saying I'm moving a little more towards One for All. Now, lastly, we have Slice. It reads that casting your class ability allows this weapon to sever targets on hit for a brief duration, up to a maximum number of targets. Now, this can sever up to 5 targets, and the total buff duration lasts for 8 seconds or 9 seconds when enhanced. The sever is really good for a variety of reasons. The Strand synergy, the 40% reduction there to enemies' outgoing damage. It's great for survivability, and for high-end content, especially in the world of Fabled and Mythic, where everything poops on you, Slice is a perk worth considering. Now I want to discuss the origin traits, because these are actually pretty good. First, we have Problem Solver. This reads that dealing sustained damage to a champion, mini-boss, or boss combatant exhausts them, and grants this weapon handling and reload speed. Now, exhaust is a 25% reduction to outgoing damage. Now, this also gives bonuses to handling and reload, and the buff itself lasts for 9 seconds, with the exhaust effect seeming to last somewhere around 5 seconds. Now, it takes 4 bursts to proc on a target. Then we have Vanguard Determination, which reads, after using your class ability, final blows of this weapon grant you bonus damage resistance. Now, this stacks up to 3 times, and it lasts for 9 seconds, and it seems like it can be refreshed indefinitely for around 20 seconds after casting your class ability. Now, this one I really wish we had concrete numbers on, as any form of damage resistance is beneficial, especially when it's this easy to get. We'll be doing a deeper dive test on it. Could be somewhere between 5% damage resist per stack, so maybe it stacks out at 15%. I'm sure some numbers are going to be coming out on it here very soon. Now, let me just say both of these are very good origin traits. It's really up to you what you need more for your build, because if you don't have your class ability often, then Vanguard's Determination won't have much use. Now, this takes us to what we recommend for your God roll. Let me just say, guys, there's a lot lot of options. I like rewind rounds in that third column. Not having to reload is pretty massive, and it allows you to just pump out a ton of damage. You can seriously pair this with any perk in the fourth column, and it's going to perform well for you. Then we have combinations like Hatchling and Chain Reaction. And even though, yes, that combination did get nerfed, I wish the Threadlings could cause elemental explosions, and it would have been perfect on this weapon. It's still a solid combination. Now, another cool combination is Hatchling and One for All. This one's interesting because the damage from Threadlings will actually grant you stacks of One for All, as you can see here. Now, Slice in the fourth column is especially good if you have your class ability up, and being able to make enemies deal 40% less damage is huge. At the same time, though, most people don't want to sacrifice their damage perk, which I get. As for your barrel and mag perks, this is all going to be focused on trying to get as much ammo reserves as possible. Now, if you notice already, these do not hold nearly as much ammo as Rocket Sidearms, for example, but we can still boost up our reserves a bit. We don't have the rolls to confirm this, but going off of what we've seen on Tenacious Mastery, you're going to want high explosive ordnance for the reserve bump. Another perk that was on Tenacious that was really good was Air Trigger, but in this case, we have Enhanced Chain Reaction if you wanted to bump up that ammo even further. Granted, we seem to be running into a cap, so hopefully Bungie addresses this, as I would like to see that reserve bump with Enhanced Chain Reaction. Now, before moving on, I do want to quickly mention some unique interactions we found while testing. For those that don't know, the Titan Exotic chest piece, Hazardous Propulsion, is known for buffing rocket damage. It also buffs the damage of Rocket Sidearms. Well, the same is also true here for Rocket Pulse Rifles. As you can see here, when we activate the Exotic, that bumps our damage up to 900 per shot, which is a 35% increase. So if you want even more damage out of this Pulse Rifle, guys, you can do like a max weapon stat with maybe even a high class stat, use Hazardous Propulsion, and then just go to Pound Town. Another good interaction we noticed is that the set bonus for the Kepler Armor Force Converter works really nicely here. It states that after a final blow with any rocket or grenade launcher, when you sprint for a short time, you gain speed booster. Now, this works for both Rocket Sidearms and for the Rocket Pulse Rifle. As you can see right here, guys, I get a kill, Force Converter is active on the left, and then we sprint, and boom, we have speed booster, which is the same speed boost you get while you're amplifying. Now, as for artifact perks, we do have a couple of things that synergize with this weapon. Of course, you have Anti-Barrier Pulse Rifle this season, so you can take advantage of that. We also have Threaded Blast, which makes tangles detonated with any strand damage increase the size and damage of the tangle explosion. We also have Elemental Daze, which reads that stunning a champion with an elemental weapon creates an elementally aligned explosion, applying a matching elemental debuff to them and nearby targets. Now, this is nice because this will apply Sever to the champion and all the enemies around them. Now, we then have Elemental Overdrive, which states that picking up an elemental pickup or tangle grants increased damage to weapons of the same elemental type. This is a 10% increase to damage for 10 seconds, but can also be paired with Elemental Coalescence, which gives us a chance to spawn elemental pickups matching our super. So if you rock a Strand super, you have a chance to create free tangles, which also feeds perfectly into Tangle Web, which makes any tangle that you spawn suspend nearby targets, as you can see here. Overall, guys, our Rocket Assisted Pulse Rifle has a ton of synergy, on top of just being a great base weapon as is. Now, before wrapping up, I do want to touch on PvP. Someone's going to ask, Cross, is it good here? Now, much like Rocket Sidearms, these are pretty rough to use inside of PvP, mainly due because of the travel time. You do spawn in with 4 ammo. Each crit does 37 plus 21 damage for a total of 58 damage per shot, or 174 damage per burst. Now, this can easily 2 bursts to the body, so it's pretty forgiving. But again, it's the time travel that's going to be rough for you to handle inside of PvP. Now, we did test if you could possibly 1 burst if you had a 200 weapon stat plus Radiant, but wasn't possible, guys. So again, without a kill perk activated, it doesn't seem like it's going to be shifting the PvP meta anytime soon. And to be quite honest with you, I don't really see any major use out of this weapon inside of PvP. Great for PvE, which is what Rocket Assisted frames always are. Not really something I would utilize inside of PvP. So that's it, guys. That is our review. Mint Retrograde dropping from Pinnacle playlist, guys. Good luck on the grind. This is definitely a weapon that I will be locking multiple tier 3s and possibly tier 4s. And hell, hopefully we can get to the point where we can actually get some tier 5s for this thing, because in its current form, it's already a monster. I can only imagine what it's going to be like with all the enhanced bells and whistles, especially enhanced origin traits. Well, fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching. And as always,
slap that like button like your mama told you right.